Hey everybody, today we're going to talk about immigration, and we're going to look at how the U.S. changes pretty quickly, late 1800s into the 1900s, with immigrants that are not going to speak the language as these native-born English-speaking people that are already in the U.S. So it says the U.S. is quickly becoming a nation of immigrants. From 1865, which is roughly the end of the Civil War, start Reconstruction, to 1914, 25 million Europeans immigrated to the U.S. The reason why it stops sort of at 1914, not totally stops, but slows down significantly, is because this is the time that we enter World War I. So we're not taking in as many immigrants during that time period. But lots of them are going to leave Europe, especially because of the problems going on over there. So that's the next thing. It's just, why were they leaving? Because of the poverty in Europe, loss of farm jobs, so they had no work, overcrowding in the cities in Europe. I mean, many of those cities are centuries old, and just lots and lots of people living there. And with so many people, it was hard to find a job. There was religious persecution, specifically of Jews in Russia, Jews everywhere in Europe. Later, when we get to World War II, we will study the life of Morris Glass, who was a Holocaust survivor, who came and spoke at Chatham Central a few years ago. He's going to talk about this, specifically how Jews are being treated throughout Europe pretty bad during this time, even prior to the rise of Hitler. And many of them are also, it's kind of like the push-pull, remember, of the West. The other factor here that's pulling them out is a good thing, which is they hear all these grand stories about how there's open farmland in the Great Plains and plenty of land for them to settle on, and also lots and lots of jobs in U.S. cities like New York City, which at this time is really rising up and becoming a massive city. Also, you had this inexpensive one-way passage that you could purchase a ticket for, and it was called steerage. And if you recall in the movie, if you've seen it, Titanic, the boy that ends up falling for the really rich girl, the guy that he plays, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, he is in steerage class. So he's like at the bottom of the boat with the rats and the other poor people. That's where most of the people coming to America are going to ride. So it's cheap accommodations. Okay, you have to know the difference between old immigrants and new immigrants. And it is not old people versus young people. It's not old immigrants came in 1900 and new immigrants are coming today. It's actually all revolves around people during this time we're studying, 1865 to 1914. But the first wave of them we call old immigrants. And it says they came through the 1880s. This is important, okay? Old immigrants came from Northern and Western Europe, which would include Britain and Germany. Also important, they had an education. Literate means that they could read. So, I mean, now their language, okay? But still, you know, they have some skill. So they can read, they have trade skills, they can work with their hands, they're craftsmen. You know, they can probably find a job pretty easily, getting paid a decent amount of money if someone will hire them because they have a skill. New immigrants start coming later, in the 1890s up until 1914. And these are really a lot of ones that are trying to get the heck out of Europe prior to World War I, with the rise of dictatorships and things going on. They are from Southern and Eastern Europe, and these would be Italians, Greeks, Slovaks, Poles, Russians. So they're Eastern European, and I'll show you where that is on the map. They generally are poor. They generally cannot read their own language, so they're illiterate. They're not used to democracies. They have no skill. So they're going to crowd into New York City, into Chicago, Boston, other cities looking for work. Okay, I spoke of showing you something, so I'll show you first map of Europe, and this shows you, this is the old immigrants, English, French, Germans. The more earthy colors here are going to be the new immigrants, the Russians, the Poles, the Czechs, the Slovaks that have no skill. These folks do have a skill. Okay. Also, I thought it would be important for you to see this. You see earlier on, this always goes back to 1820, but earlier on you have the old immigrants, Ireland, Germany, the UK, United Kingdom, or Britain. Then you see it starts transitioning to the new immigrants from Italy, from Russia, from Hungary. Okay. All right. So they're going to take this long 14-day journey. I will tell you, in some cases, it took a month, 30 days, but on a really good trip, it would take 2 weeks. In that bottom of the boat, you would have lots of issues going on down there, including motion sickness, getting seasick, other things. They're going to be processed by a medical examiner when they are allowed into New York Harbor at Ellis Island. So those coming from Europe go through Ellis Island. Those who are sick or had problems are marked with chalk and separated out. I have a picture of that as well. I just want to show you, this is kind of the view from the boat, and you can barely see the New York City here in the skyline, which is different than it looks today, but they're coming into Ellis Island here. Notice they're white, so they are probably European since they're coming in that direction. This is the processing center that was on Ellis Island at the time, and you notice they're kind of treated like cattle, herded in. They sat for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Men, women, children waiting to see if they would be allowed in. Today, the view, of course, now is the Statue of Liberty, which was the signal of hope and democracy and freedom for people coming into our new world. Okay, so these folks are going to live in what we would think of like slums or tenement apartments. A lot of them lived by culture, so you would have like Little Italy for an Italian section of town, the Jewish Lower East Side. It says over 4,000 people reside in one city block. So it's a lot of people. Jacob Riis is going to write a book called How the Other Half Lives, and he's going to show pictures of how people are just crowded into these dumbbell tenements, which I will save for someone to do their project on, but there's some amazing pictures of that, how they would live like 12, 15 people to one-room apartment. So the dumbbell tenements were built like a dumbbell. So I brought one. This is a 10-pound, and you see it's got the two ends here, and then the small part in the middle that you hold on to. Well, the apartment is going to look like that, and I can show you a picture. Had ventilation shafts in the center. After it was mandated that they had to have windows, because prior to that they didn't have windows. So you see it here. This is the hallway, and then you would have these sections. Basically, one family lived in bedroom, bedroom, living room, parlor. And then this family over here, bedroom, bedroom, living room, parlor, so on and so forth. Same thing over here, except this was one bedroom. Most of the time, the ones you'll see in the pictures Jacob Riis does was a one bedroom, and this was more like the kitchen area. So basically like 2 rooms maybe. It says lots of filth, cholera, typhoid, tuberculosis. The sewage was disposed of in drinking water. Dead horses were left in the street. It was really nasty. It said this working class group of people relied on both parents to work. Children worked, and we've already talked about child labor, but children are expected to work in the factories as well. Also introduced in this time was mass transit, horse car, cable cars, in San Francisco in 1873, electric trolley, and then in New York, the subway. Here is a book about a cable car, a children's book, and it shows you here in this picture, if you can see the cable cars going through, you see their cable right there. You also see more electric cars coming through now. And of course, all the other, congestion, the people walking. The cities had just become massive congestion. Also during this time, Thomas Edison brings through this lovely jewel here, the light bulb on my face. So the light bulb revolutionizes America. Because now factories can work all night long. They can run multiple shifts. We have elevators, powered subways, even eventually home lighting. Okay. All right. Now, with all that and these immigrants coming in, you're bound to have people to take advantage of them. And remember, most of these, especially new immigrants, could not even speak English. So they're arriving so fast, they need food, housing, police protection, heat, and the tenements don't offer that usually. The local government cannot keep up with demand, and because of that, you have corruption. You have political machines that emerge and party bosses. It's like a political party that takes over, someone's at the head, and they start getting involved in corruption. It says they were fraudulent, they were involved in corruption, they sold permits to their friends to get them to operate public utilities like water, and then would charge astronomical prices. I have a graphic here that shows you that basically the machine was run by the boss, who had influence over everyone in the city, fire, police, he owned them all. They would hand out jobs, contracts, and favors for bribes. And basically, this is what you wanted, okay? You would say, look, I will, pretty much do whatever you want me to do, but I need to be paid. So the bosses would accept lots and lots of cash, and that also meant buying, basically people, they were going out buying people's votes. Residents would vote for that boss again and again, and like the police, the firemen, all those people that were in bed, so to speak, with the party boss, and the machine would maintain power over the city and control all the politics in the city. So it was totally corrupt, and these immigrants are not getting any support. They're being led to the voting booth by one of the party machine people, and told, if you'll vote for the boss, we'll get you a better housing, and then that never happens, that kind of thing. The most famous political machine was called Tammany Hall. Famous boss was Boss Tweed, big guy. He controlled the police department, every other department. He was eventually sentenced to prison for corruption. Thomas Nast is a cartoonist who basically exposes the corruption, and he brings up the money issue again that I've already showed you, and he says basically, that Boss Tweed is accepting all this money. He says 65% of the money goes into Boss Tweed's pockets, and he draws cartoons, which was important because a lot of immigrants could not read English, but they could understand the cartoon. Lincoln Steffens is going to write about Boss Tweed, whereas Thomas Nast draws pictures for the newspaper. And Steffens here is going to talk about the corruption of Boss Tweed and bring out muckrakers who, with him, expose Boss Tweed's failures and corruption. Last thing is nativism, and this is extreme dislike of immigrants by native-born people. And most nativists hated Catholics. They hated Asians, Jews, Eastern Europeans, Irishmen. They thought that you should be born here to get a job. And they're just really, really nasty to the immigrants. As well, Chinese people are coming in, remember, you already knew that, through Angel Island. And this is on the coast of California. And they're going to come in just like Ellis brought in Europeans. Angel brings in Asians. And then, of course, we have the Chinese Exclusion Act. What I'll try to do is show you a video of Donald Trump talking, and we can discuss if you think he is in fact a nativist. Okay, make sure you write your summary and show that to me. All right, thanks, guys.